Hey, David Brewster here with another Three for All, and this is three Joe Bonamassa licks from 2019. And this is kind of the second part of the two-part series I've kind of put together. The first part was Eric Gale's, section of this kind of guitar duel between Eric Gales and Joe Bonamassa. And this obviously is the Joe Bonamassa, version of that live footage. So it came from a cruise. It was the Keeping the Blues Alive cruise in 2019. I believe it was just like a week ago or a few days ago. And that was in the Mediterranean. And during this live footage, you can find Joe and Eric Gales kind of jamming on the song "The Ballad of John Henry," which is one of Joe's songs. And during the solo, there's a lot of cool licks and ideas, and you can kind of look at it almost like a duel. Even though, I mean, they're friends, and there's no like fierce competition here. It's a friendly jam, but it's very intense, and Eric kind of sets the bar pretty high and starts whipping out, some cool licks, which we looked at those in the previous installment. And then Joe steps up and kind of takes over and starts doing, his own cool licks. And then they both kind of start jamming at the end, and they finish the song. But it's really cool, and I love these kind of spontaneous, intense moments. And historically, you can find a lot of footage like this. It's like a guest appearance or someone, kind of jumps up on stage and the guitarist battle or duel. And, one of the most famous, I think, is Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck, and they're playing, Further On Up the Road. And I love Clapton. It's a classic, performance. I love Clapton. But Jeff Beck is like, far and away my favorite guitarist. I love Jeff Beck. And, when I first saw that footage, Clapton's doing his thing with the Strat, and then Jeff takes over. He's playing that Butterscotch Blonde Telly, and he just completely smokes Clapton. You can even see it on Clapton's face, where he just looks over like, wow, I love that, and it's not like Jeff is trying to step on Eric, but he's literally whipping out, these cool licks, and you can tell Eric's kind of caught off guard, like, oh man, why did I invite you up here again? And so it's not really like that with the Eric Gales and Joe Bonamassa, but it reminds me of that kind of thing where, two superstar guitar players, feeding off each other and kind of pushing each other. And for some reason, Joe kind of has like a bad rap, not from everybody. He's got a big, loyal fan base. But for some reason, he's a target, and people say stuff about his vintage guitar collection, or they say stuff about his music or his attitude or whatever. And I'll just say it like this. I mean, Joe Bonamassa is a monster guitar player. He's great. He's exceptionally talented. He's been on the scene for a while. And definitely, all the way back to Bloodline. If you haven't heard the Bloodline album, like from '94, he was 17, when he laid that down. And ironically, Eric Gales was also 17 when he made his debut with the Eric Gales Band. So they were a little different, a couple of years different in age, but they both kind of hit the scene at the same time, or the same age rather, at 17. But when you hear, that Bloodline album, it's phenomenal. His guitar playing is great, the solos are great, the tone's good. The Storm, which is like the instrumental song on there, is brilliant. It's like, man, that's a great album. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, who's this smoking Joe Bonamassa guy? And I've definitely followed his career, from Bloodline, from that moment on. And I really respect him. I think he's a great player. He has a lot of great ideas. He definitely posts, some video blogs and stuff like that, and shares his opinions about the industry and record labels and the whole thing. And yeah, I like him. I don't know why people have such a negative, opinion. Not everyone, but there are some people that just they grab their pitchforks and their torches, and it's like, why are you giving him such a hard time? I mean, he's a great player. He seems like a really nice guy. He has, a phenomenal guitar collection, so I think he deserves a lot more respect than some people out there give him. And the first lick is a speed lick, and it's kind of interesting that both Eric and Joe started whipping out, speed licks during their solos. So this one, it kind of reminds me of Eric Johnson a little bit, and there's kind of a repetitive, sextuplet at the end, which is kind of cool. But it sounds and looks like this. And if I slow that down, basically built out of E minor pentatonic, but you're racing through it. The next lick is this kind of, pull off, legato speed lick. And he also stepped on a wah pedal too, right before he played this. So the wah, he really just kind of has it like half cocked. He's not really sweeping it, like Voodoo Child or something. It's more or less kind of a filter, like a tone filter. And you can hear him, he's kind of moving, slowly moving his foot with the wah pedal. I didn't bother to hook up a wah pedal for this, but the lick looks like this. Right there you can see we're basically grabbing E on the 12th fret there on the high E, and then pull off from D to C sharp there on the B string. Now the interesting thing there is it's a little 3-note motif, and we could play that a bunch of different ways. You could experiment with how you play that. So you could do it like this. You could do it like this. You could do it like, the way I showed you a minute ago there. You could also do it like this. So you can see right there, just taking that 3-note pattern, we can move it around and you can find, different ways of playing it. And one of those fingerings or versions might be, very comfortable for your fingers. So anytime you learn, just kind of a short little speed lick like that, experiment with it, move it around and try it in different, positions and on different strings, and you might find a variation that you prefer, or, just another version of that idea. The next idea is a Phrygian Dominant lick, and Eric Gales actually, started his lead during this section of the duel. He started his lead with the Phrygian Dominant, phrase or melody. And then I think that kind of influenced Joe. And that's one reason why I really like, kind of spontaneous, loose jams like this, because you hear Eric play, and then you hear Joe kind of take over. But then what Eric did kind of influences Joe, because you hear him do this. And that's basically, once again, E Phrygian Dominant. In a different position, because previously we were looking at that. And then here's Joe. It's kind of playing in a higher position, but it's the same scale. I really like Phrygian Dominant too. It's a very ear-catching, mode. And once again, that's the 5th mode from the harmonic minor scale. So it's really, unusual and interesting to hear kind of a blues rock jam, and there's this exotic, kind of flamenco and metal, flavored scale right in the middle right there. I like it. All right, here's a bonus lick from the solo, and once again, it's kind of a pentatonic speed lick, and it kind of reminds me of Eric Johnson a little bit. And it's interesting that both Eric Gales and Bonamassa kind of threw out some, Eric Johnson inspired runs, but it looks like this. And there you can see we're basically sliding into that A on the high E string. And we're just basically kind of, changing positions with that little shift slide there. And then he grabs G there on the 12th fret on the G string, bends that up kind of a half step. And then just kind of walks down and eventually targets that A note right there. Really cool lick. That's going to wrap this look at 3 licks from Joe Bonamassa, and I kind of like the idea of taking these 2 players and showcasing their performance, but then kind of splitting them off and looking at what Eric Gales did, and then looking at what Joe Bonamassa did. And, who knows? I might do something like this again in the future. So leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back with some more content material very soon. Thank you.